everyone. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Sunflower Nation Women in Leadership. I'm so excited to share with you our special guest today. Her name is Nadine Traille. She is a trailblazer, and I'm going to allow her to tell you about some of the various hats she wears, and we'll jump into her journey as a woman in leadership.
Good morning. My name is Nadine Traille. I am a nurse practitioner. I work in the Neonatal ICU. I've been there for 16 years. I love my job working with the premature babies, especially with working with their families. I am the mother to two amazing girls, Alyssa and Nia. They are 10 and 11. My amazing husband, Kevin Traille, who's also in the medical field in anesthesia as a CRNA. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. Both my parents grew up in Haiti and came here when they were in their teens, early 20s. I went to college at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Initially, I was a psych major. And then towards the end of my career, I was like, oh, college career, I was trying to figure out what exactly am I going to do with a psych degree. My sister was like, why don't you think about nursing? I'm like, oh, I'm not really too sure. And then I remember I had a really humbling moment. I had graduated from college, had my bachelor's, and I was working in the limited. And one of my sister's friends walks in. She's like, "Oh, how are you? What are you up to now?" And I kind of felt embarrassed that I was graduated from college and now I'm working in the limited. So I think I went home that night and started looking at what courses that I needed to take to play with the idea of going into nursing. I actually called my aunt that day because there was no schools in New York, Brooklyn that I could find, Bronx, to take some of the prereqs. They were all full. I called my aunt in Florida. I was like, can I come live with you for the summer? And she said, sure. Why? And I was like, I'm thinking about going into nursing. I need to take some prereqs. And the school that you're at currently has those prereqs open. So she welcomed me. I lived there for her for a summer. I took all my prereqs and then started my journey in nursing school that fall.
Wow, that is quite a journey. It's interesting though. I'm glad that you brought that up, that you went to college and then found yourself working retail basically. Yeah. And you felt this sense of embarrassment. And it's funny because as I continue to grow the Sunflower Nation, there are days where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? How do I have a doctorate degree? And I'm like, trying to beg people to do podcast recordings with me, and sometimes it's like, why am I doing this? Like I had a great job, making a good salary. And then here I am now, following my passion, no doubt about it. Okay. I love what I'm doing, but it's certainly not as lucrative as what I would want it to be. But all of that takes time. But in your particular case, you didn't feel like you were living your passion.
No, I wasn't living my passion. I always knew that I wanted to go into medicine, and I was pre-med. I didn't do well on the MCATs, and everyone was like, why don't you do a master's? Why don't you do this and do that? I applied to medical school in the Caribbean. That didn't work out. And then I was just like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, I have this degree. I need to do something with it, but I still want to be in medicine. So then when my sister suggested nurse, I was like, let me give it a try. And I must say that I kind of regret not going into nursing straight in college because I feel like that's the path where I was supposed to be. That's where I'm supposed to be. I completely love what I do. The time that I get to spend with the patients and their families, and then going back to school to become a nurse practitioner, I'm getting to play a role in terms of like, I can diagnose, I can prescribe medicine. So I still get to have best of both worlds where I can be compassionate and truly spend time with patients, but I can also be on like that diagnostic side where I can participate with the team and make decisions on the patient's care.
I think that's amazing. And I think you actually have a really hard job because you're working with babies who were born prematurely. Yeah. So it doesn't always turn out great, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's correct.
And not everyone is built for that. Like I know I could not do this work that you do. Yeah. Tell us about that. How do you manage that when, you grow so close to patients and to their families, calling them patients, which they are, but they're babies.
Yes, maybe. Yeah.
And you grow close to the families. How do you cope when things don't go as planned?
It is difficult. But I think in my mind, I'm always thinking about what's the quality of life for this child going to be and the quality of life for their family. And I know that's hard because, I've been there for a long time, so I kind of can see how things are going to go. And the hardest part is that, they're babies, and there's times where we know that their life expectancy isn't going to be long, but their quality of life is going to be really, really, really poor. And I don't think families understand how that is going to affect the quality of life and the quality of life of their other children. So it's kind of trying to help them understand what exactly is going on. But then every story is not sad. We have a lot of amazing stories. So that's what keeps us going. Like, I think we understand when, not that enough is enough, but like, the quality of this child's life is not going to be good at all. They might not walk, they might not talk, they might not know you. But then you have miracle cases where you have a kid who was born 6 months and actually thrives and does well. So it's just those are the moments that are like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I am in the right career. Yes, there are some sad moments, but there are some amazing moments as well.
How do you not become numb to it all? Because and I've spoken about this on the show several times. My father's health has declined this year and he's been in the hospital. And we've worked with some nurses who are absolutely amazing and encouraging and supportive. But there was one nurse in particular that I think I'll never forget her. She was just so negative and said, "Oh no, he's going to die." And I'm like, yeah, like we're all going to die, but like, what do you mean he's going to die? She's like, "Oh, I don't even think he'll make it to the end of the week." And it was so nonchalant, like it wasn't a person's life that she was talking about. And I don't believe that she meant it to be cruel or heartless, but that definitely is how we received it. And I think it's because she's been doing it for so long that is just, she's almost immune to being sensitive to the fact that these are people's loved ones. So how have you been able to maintain a sense of care and sensitivity for your babies that you care for and their families?
I I think that some nurses are jaded. Nurses are overworked, underpaid, and it's a lot that is required of you to be at the bedside. And that's kind of why I kind of pulled away from the bedside, because it's easy to get overworked and feel jaded and forget that these are people's lives that you have in their hands. These are people's families. These are people's loved ones. Um, but I also think it's your personality as well. And I feel like I'm a compassionate person. So I just continue to remember that, this is someone's child. This is someone who got pregnant because they wanted to start a family, and things didn't go how they planned it to go. So I need to do my best, even though we have parents sometimes who are really, they're intense. It's a lot to deal with them, but you have to remember that, this is not the path that they chose. So they're learning how to become a parent. Sometimes first time parents is their first experience with having a child, and it's a child that's not sick, that is sick, that is not well. So they're going through a lot of emotions. So you just have to try and be compassionate and remember. And there are those days where I'm just like, oh, that was a lot. This person was a lot, but I just step away, and I have the motto of kill them with kindness. Even if you're not in a good mood, they're not in a good mood, kill them with kindness. And then hopefully you'll be able to bring them back around to appreciating all the things that you're doing for that kid.
I think that's definitely a great way of looking at it and providing that support and maintaining your own mental health and stability. So you said you are married, and your husband also is in the medical field.
Yes,
I
yes.
imagine that both of you have these crazy schedules.
We
and
do.
You have 2 kids.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you?
It's a lot of help from grandparents. We're fortunate that my husband's parents live close. We actually moved up to where we live currently because we needed help. And my mom was still living in Brooklyn, so she was commuting on the weekends. And then when she retired, she moved up here as well. So without the grandparents, we would not be able to work the long hours that we work and have the kids have someone in the home taking them to their activities as well.
So, as a mom, tell me what that looks like. Like, did you plan your pregnancies? Did you have any difficulties with throughout with carrying your babies? Watching premature babies all the time, was that a fear of yours?
So yes, we planned our pregnancies. And then I think we were married for probably like a year, and like I wasn't getting pregnant. So we just did a deeper dive into that. And I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it's just hormone imbalances. So I was fortunate that I just had to get on one medication to just help level out my hormone level, not Clomid or anything like that, that makes you ovulate more, just something to control my insulin levels, which helped me to ovulate on my own. And then I got pregnant with my first daughter, Alyssa. And then my second daughter, Nia, said, "Hey, hold on, wait up. I'm here." 5 months later, I got pregnant with Nia. Um, so that was the two of them. Um, and it's amazing to be a mom, but it's also challenging working a full-time job. I work 12 hours, which is great because it allows me to be off on days, and I can try to read my schedule to be present for them if they have school activities. 2 weeks ago, I got to go on a field trip as a chaperone for Nia. So that's really why I love nursing in itself, because it still allows me to continue to do what I love, but it also allows me to be there for my girls when they need me to. And I work with pretty much all women on my team of nurse practitioners. And we understand that, so we move our schedules around for one another to allow other people to go to events for their kids. So it's a great balance.
So, what would you say is the most challenging part of being a working mom?
I would say the most challenging part about being a working mom is, unfortunately, you do miss things. You like, for my girls, they see that mommy is present. Mommy gets up, she goes to work, and then she comes home, and I'm cooking dinner, I'm cleaning the house, I'm doing all those things that need to do to continue to have the house running. But at the end of the day, I still get up and go to work. So I feel like I'm setting a good example for them to show them that you can do it all. It does take balance. Sometimes I'm tired, sometimes I'm cranky, but I try my best to always try and be there for them.
I think that's great. Definitely. So it is a blessing to have family around to help
Yeah.
you. I definitely wish I had more of that
Hmm.
when my son was younger, because I can speak to that challenge of trying to balance everything, trying to grow your career, but still being present, being so important. And have you ever? I used to feel mommy guilt all the time. Like that
Oh
was
yeah.
really a struggle for me. Is that something that you have experienced or still do experience?
Yeah, definitely. Especially when they want to go somewhere. So my daughter now is getting into the preteen years. She's 12 and she wants to do this with her friends and she wants to do that. But like I never understood why my mom didn't let me go places until now. Like I get it. Like, but I'm trying to afford for the opportunities that I didn't have to go out and hang out with her friends. But I need to be there. I need to be some type of supervision, but that always doesn't my schedule doesn't always allow for that. So then that's mom guilt if I have to tell her no. And then I kind of think back, I'm like, okay, how can I make this work? How can I make it work for the both of us? So yes, mom guilt is real. I hate it, but it's like my husband can say no and it's no, it's done. It's finished. He's off playing video games. He's forgotten about it. But me, like I say no and then I feel bad and I'm like, okay, how can I make it work for her and I?
Yeah, I definitely can relate with the husband kind of like, I said, no, that's it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why are we still talking about this? Why are you still thinking
Exactly.
about it? And then you're like, but I kind of, I don't want them to feel isolated and not have
Yeah,
what their
exactly.
friends have. So I
Yep.
definitely get that. When you moved, because you said you moved to be closer to your husband's family, were there any
Hmm.
challenges with that? A lot of times we hear about, having challenges with the in-laws, and not necessarily wanting to be around them as much. Some in-laws can be very intrusive, some can be very hands-off. How is that experience for you?
It's funny because when I tell people how close I am with my in-laws, people are like, "Oh my God, that's crazy. You're lucky." And I'm like, "No, I'm not lucky. I'm blessed." Like, I have a great relationship with both my father-in-law and my mother-in-law. Like, I can have conversations with both of them. My husband sometimes used to get upset because my mother-in-law would tell me things first before she would tell him. And I'm also lucky that my mom gets along with the both of them. Like, we call them the Three Musketeers. When we've gone on family vacations, it's all of us together. And I tell my father-in-law, "Oh, now you have two wives," and he'll be like sandwiched in the middle between them. So we're definitely blessed that everyone is works well together, and like we all have a common goal amongst all of us, and it's to raise these girls. Like, we couldn't raise the girls the way that we are without their help.
That's a blessing. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. It is a blessing. Where did you meet this fabulous husband?
It's funny. I met him at a barbecue across the street from my house. My neighbors, the daughter that lived there was good friends with his cousin, and he came to a barbecue one year, and that's how we met.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Awesome. 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 So you both went back to school while you were together, right? Did that
Yeah.
put any strain on you or strain on the relationship? How did you balance that? Were you both in school at the same time?
So we had a 6-month period where we were both in school. I was finishing my NP, and he was starting his doctorate program in nurse anesthesia. So that 6 month was, and it's funny, it wasn't until after he told me, he was like, "Yeah, I didn't know how we were going to get through that, but I didn't let you stress about it because I had to do all my clinical hours." It's been so long that I can't even remember exactly how many I had to do exactly, but I was working full time and I had to do probably like 400, 500 clinical hours to complete this degree. So I literally had one day off during the week. Every other day, I was either in clinical or working.
And you had the kids already at this point?
We had the kids already. They were probably 2 and 3 when we first
Oh,
started.
wow. Yeah,
So,
that
like, when I
definitely is
started,
hard.
Nia was only 9 months when I started, and it took me 3 years. So, I'll never forget, they spent a lot of time at my in-laws' house. They had their own room there. My father-in-law would go after work and let the dog out because we had dogs in the mix. And one day, Alyssa looked at him and he was like, "Grandpa, I love you, but I want to go home," because she
Oh,
had been there 3 consecutive days. Like, I would go at work and say hi and play with them and put them to bed, but she hadn't been in her own house in her own room for like 3 days. So it was definitely a struggle, but we got it through. At one point, Kevin was living in Bridgeport where he went to school because it was just too much. When you do nurse anesthesia, you can't work. So he was not working, and it was very, very intense for him. So he would leave Monday morning. He had a room in a house, and then he would come back Friday evening. So he was gone all week. So it was pretty much me and the grandparents kind of like bouncing between us, like picking the girls up, dropping them to school, and those things.
and you made it through.
Made it through.
And now what does life look like for you?
Life is good.
Oh, it was worth it.
um,
It was worth it.
it was definitely worth it. All the sacrifice was worth it. Like, we're in a better place financially now. We got a bigger home. We are in a better school district. Our kids, we get to travel and see the world, which is great for them to see those things. Like, we worked hard and we sacrificed, but now we're in a place where, if you want something and we think it's appropriate, it's easy for us to get it for you.
I think that's a blessing, honestly. And I love that you mentioned that because a lot of times people see the end result. And it's like, man, I want what
Yeah.
they got,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily know what they went through to get there.
Yeah. I tell
So I
people that
appreciate
all
you
the
sharing
time.
that.
Yeah. Like, a lot of the nurses, I've been at my job for 16 years. So they've seen the progress. So, like, when my husband was graduating, they were like, "We know how hard it was for you guys. Like, you guys were both in school." So I appreciate those people that have seen our entire journey. They don't just see the end result now, because we didn't just get here overnight. It was a lot of work here.
Right. Right. That's great. I think it's a blessing. And I wish more people really understood that the success doesn't come overnight.
Yeah.
Having worked with college age students for 18 years, I hear students all the time saying, oh, they graduate. Can you believe they're trying to pay me $40,000, miss? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
Like, you don't graduate and make $150,000 out the door.
No, you
Like,
don't.
so, and even myself, I remember starting my job at one of the colleges, and I'm looking at the vice president, and I'm like, man, look at her car. And, she invited us to her
Yeah.
house for bar. I'm like, look at it. Like, and look at this little paycheck that they're giving me. Why she gets all of this? But you know what? She was there for 38 years and was
Yeah,
just starting
exactly.
out
So she
fresh out of
earned it. Yeah,
college.
exactly.
Right. So people don't necessarily always realize that there are steps to this. It's a
Yeah, there
progression.
are exactly steps. Absolutely.
What inspired you to go back to school?
It was actually my husband, because he always knew that when he was in nursing school, he walked into an OR and he was kind of like mesmerized by the person giving anesthesia. So he's watching them and he's like, even in the room, he was like, man, I want to do I wish I could do what you do. And the person turned around and was like, you can, I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse anesthetist. So since he was in nursing school, he knew that he was going to go back to school to get his masterate and get his doctorate. So one day he was like, you're going to let me beat you? You're going to let me go back to school before you? And I was like, oh man, here we go. So that was the motivation that I needed, because I always knew that I wanted to go back to school, but I had just had my second baby, but I needed that little push. So
Are you
that's
guys
how I got.
competitive with each other?
Not really. I think he just used that as like a motivator for me, but we're not really competitive.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. So growing up, I know you said you grew up in Brooklyn. And you grew up with your mom. Was your dad present at all, or?
Yes, my dad was present. My parents got a divorce probably when I was like 10 years old. So I grew up in the house with both of them until I was about 10.
How did that affect you? Well, let me just ask the question before I ask my follow-up.
How did that affect me? People probably won't understand this, but for me, it was like a relief because they didn't really get along. So they were never like lovey-dovey in love in front of my eyes. So it was kind of a relief when they got a divorce, because I was just like, now I can breathe. Like, not walking on eggshells anymore. Like, I still got to see my dad a lot. He was still present in my life. So it wasn't like he left and I never saw him. I just, would have to call him and he'd come pick me up, kind of thing. So
I think that's good. I think a
yeah.
lot of parents stay together for the kids,
Yeah.
and they don't realize the negative impact it actually has on
Absolutely.
the
It has
kids.
a negative impact. So I knew that for my life that I wasn't going to do that. Like, when me and my husband were dating, I was like, listen, I don't do cheating. Like, that's a hard no for me. Like, some women stay. I was like, I don't know how I would be able to do that because I trust you completely. My husband tells me he's going out with his friends. Okay, I'll see you later. I don't worry about what he's doing, who he's doing it with, because I trust him completely. So for me, if you cheat, then we lose that trust and we lose that dynamic of you can just come and go as you please, because now I'm gonna always second guess what you're doing. So that was literally like maybe month one. I was like, I don't do cheating. Like that's a hard stop for me.
It's a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker.
Do you feel like growing up, it was difficult for you to go into relationships where you're afraid to get married because your parents had divorced?
That's a good question. Actually, no, and I don't know why that wasn't an issue for me. I just knew what I wanted. And like also watching how my mom was, she's very strong also, and she didn't take any crap. So like watching her, I knew that I wasn't gonna take any either. So I was in a situation that I didn't like it. All right, I'm out. We're done. Like I don't need to stay here and see how it's gonna be and how it's gonna work out. You like what does over say? When someone shows them who they are, you believe them. If you show me who you are, I believe you. I'm good. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. And I think that speaks to your confidence in yourself and your belief in your self-worth.
And I feel as women you should, because like I tell people, I was like, there's someone prettier than me. There's someone who looks better than me, but I am who I am. What I bring to the table. So I'm not trying to compete with anyone else. You love me for who I am and what you see in me. I can't compete with what you see in somebody else.
Talk like a boss. I like it. Oh Lord. So, oh my goodness, this is really great. I love your confidence and your poise. I love the fact that you have this beautiful family, and that you're all working together for
Yeah.
your kids.
Yeah.
So, when you think about your journey as a nurse, what were some of the challenges? Did you ever feel like being a woman of color affected you either positively or negatively?
Um, no, I would say the unit that I work on is very welcoming, and it's interesting. We're a very big unit, like 150 nurses. And when I first started, it was less than 10 Black nurses. So over the years, I've seen more Black nurses come onto our unit, but our field is not filled with women of color. That's just when you look at it, it's a lot of Caucasian women who are nurses, and that's just how it is. Um, but I never felt any kind of way in my unit because I'm a woman of color. Everyone was always nice and still is.
What organizations are you a part of? Have you, whether while you were in college, or even just within the community or the nursing community, have you been active in any organizations?
No, and that's really bad. I do not belong to any organizations. Um, when I was in college, like Caribbean Students Association, those kind of things, but no organizations as an adult.
Okay. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think a lot of times we join organizations, and I talk about Mocha Moms all the time. It's a support group for women of color with children.
Mhm.
But you were blessed to have a built-in support system, so you
Yeah,
didn't necessarily need some of the things that other women need. And again, I'll
Mhm.
stress that that is a blessing.
Yeah,
And you probably have great friends.
I
What does
do.
what does your social life look like? You have this busy schedule, you have kids, you have a husband. What does it look like socially? What do you do for fun?
For fun, we like to travel. We definitely caught the travel bug recently, so we do travel. Like my husband's like once a quarter. So people are like, how's that work? Well, he works a lot because that's what he enjoys doing. Like he has things that he has on his agenda that he wants to do. So he's like, if that's what I want to do, then I'll work hard, play hard ultimately. In the summer we host a lot because we have a nice yard. So people come over, we spend a lot of time with our friends that way. And I think that's what actually kind of saved us during COVID because we had a great outdoor space. So we were able to have our house be the meeting place for people where everybody felt comfortable and we would spend time with one another. So we spend a lot of time with our friends, but we're like homebodies also in a sense. So hanging out on a Friday might be hanging out at our friend's house that lives not far from here. And it's just having a glass of wine, just unwinding about the week and letting the kids play, not necessarily going to the club and lounges and stuff like that, just hanging out with our people.
I love that. So I'm glad you mentioned COVID. As two people in the medical field, how did that affect your household?
It was rough. The NICU wasn't bad at all. We only had like one or two babies actually have COVID, and they did really, really well. Um, yeah, I was in the hospital exposed to the moms. There were a lot of moms who had COVID. And during that time when they were positive for COVID, they couldn't come and see the baby. So that was a big dynamic. So like 14 days, they delivered their baby and couldn't come into the NICU for 14 days. So that was hard. But in terms of being exposed to people who had COVID, I was fortunate that our unit and how it's set up, we did not see a lot of COVID.
Did it put a strain at all on your household, knowing that you were in the hospital, around people who potentially had COVID? Your husband was around people who potentially had COVID, and then coming home
Yeah.
to your children. What was that routine like? I hear
Um,
about people who were like, oh, they stripped in the garage before they
it's
could go
true.
inside the house.
we didn't strip in the garage, but we literally would, like, our shoes stay outside anyway. But we would literally walk from the garage straight to our bedroom and take a shower. The girls were not able to give us a hug or a kiss until we both took a shower after coming in from work. Um, we didn't quarantine away from them because we're like, they were already quarantining at home because school was closed and they're doing everything virtually. So to take that element of contact away from them, we never did that. It was just, we're just like, we're gonna live, and if somebody in the house happens to get COVID, we'll figure it out. Um,
Did any
but
of you ever get COVID?
not during the height of COVID. Probably like a year after when we had already been vaccinated. My husband and my daughter Alyssa still have never had COVID. Me and Nia had COVID. um, so it's just weird.
That's interesting because my sister and her husband, my sister's husband works for the postal office. And so he was an essential worker and still had to go
Hmm.
out every day. And my sister, who works from home, somehow contracted COVID
COVID.
and he
That's
didn't.
true.
And he was 100% opposed to quarantining from her. So
Hmm.
they still slept in
Yeah.
the same bed while she
Yeah.
had COVID and he never got COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how is that even
I
possible?
I
Like
think
they
it's your
still kissed
body and your,
goodnight,
yeah.
they kissed goodbye. And it was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, really?
I think it's everyone's immune system because
It's different,
Kevin was
right?
literally intubating COVID patients. Like he had the full gear on because that's his line of work, but he never got COVID.
Look at that.
So yeah.
Okay. Is there any one thing that you worry about most for your girls?
Hmm. It's funny that you said this morning. I was talking to Alyssa. She was like, "Mommy, I had a bad dream. It was about a school shooting, and I've had this dream multiple times. And like this time, I know how to escape, but I couldn't find my way home." And I'm like, the fact that she thinks about school shootings and how to escape, and that our kids are living in this world where that's their reality. They're doing, active shooter drills. Those are things like we just had fire drills when we were their
Right.
age, and now they're learning how to, be make yourself small and when a shooter comes in the building, and that kind of breaks my heart that that's their reality. So I worry about this world. Like, what is this world going to be like in 30 years when they're adults?
I agree. I think it's sad to hear stuff like
Yeah,
that. My
right.
son, when he used to ride the school bus, used to have to do a bus drill where they had the kids jump out the back of the bus.
Really?
And I'm
Oh,
like, when he told me that, I'm like, you have to jump out the back of the bus. And
oh wow.
it's a real thing, it's a real drill. um, so it's scary the things that we have to think about now that
Yeah,
we never thought about.
never thought about before. Yeah. Like I think about it when I go to the movies. Like that was our thing. They would have half days and we're going to the movies. And now I'm like, okay, where are all the exits? What would happen if somebody just came in here? And it's sad that those are the things you think about.
Hmm.
Or whenever you go out now, like where's the nearest exit?
Yeah.
Just in case.
So what are the goals? What's next for you and your family?
I don't know. That's a that's a good question. I would just say continuing to enjoy life. Um, we've been thinking about, maybe investment properties, finding other ways to grow our money to, it's all about building generational wealth. Like how can you make the money that you work making your 9 to 5 make money for you? Because that's the only way we're gonna get rich. We're not gonna get rich going to work. We're gonna get rich or making more money and things to our kids is finding ways to invest that money. So I think that's one of our next biggest goals is figuring out how to build generational wealth.
Nice. Nice. So you have provided a wealth of information for us, and I can't thank you enough. I also want to thank you for the work that you do. I think the work that you do is so important, and you have to have a really special heart to do that. So thank you for what you're doing for the world. Sunflower Nation is all about sharing positive messages to make the world a little bit better. And I imagine that you're always speaking life into these babies and providing support and encouragement to parents and all of that makes such a big difference. So thank you for what you do and for who you are.
No,
Uh,
thank you.
what advice would you give to the next generation of women as they come up when they see this amazing life that you live? What advice would you give them?
I would just say work hard. Find your career, your path that you are passionate about. Because I would say that I am passionate about working with the babies. Like I truly love it. My husband's always like, "You're never gonna leave that job," and he's right. I'm probably never gonna leave that job because I enjoy it so much. I enjoy the people that I work with. Not to say that it doesn't have its challenges, because every job does. But at the end of the day, when I come home, I'm satisfied with the work that I did and the care that I provided. So just finding some place and a job that you really enjoy doing. Um, and it takes time. It takes time to get to where you want to be. It doesn't just happen overnight. I was a bedside nurse for 9 years before I transitioned to becoming an NP. And also find a partner that's going to support you. We support each other. We push each other to be better and to do better. So I could have stayed at the bedside and been stagnant, even though my goal was to become an NP because I was happy with that job that I was doing. But my husband was like, you want to do more. You're capable of doing more. So go for it. So that was really important.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nadine. This has been a great conversation, and I know that our listeners will definitely benefit from the advice and guidance that you have provided. So thank you again for being part of this show. To the listeners, I want to thank you for listening today. Thank you for joining us. May your hearts be filled with the brightest of sunflowers, even on the cloudiest of days. Wishing you love and positive vibes. Until next time, take care.